the moment my mother-in-law's hand struck my son across the face at Thanksgiving dinner. I felt something inside me snap forever. If this story touches your heart, don't just scroll, like and subscribe, and be part of this journey. My name is Rachel Carter, and the day everything exploded started like a normal family holiday. Or at least that's what I thought. The Carter house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon pie. Warm lights glowed above the long wooden table. Plates clinked. People laughed. My husband, Daniel, stood beside me in the kitchen. "You okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just nervous." He chuckled softly. "Mom always gets intense on Thanksgiving." Intense. That was a polite word for Margaret Carter. My mother-in-law. Perfect hair. Perfect manners. Perfect control. And she never liked me. Not from the first day. I still remembered the first thing she ever said to me. "You seem sweet," she had said slowly. Then she looked me up and down. But Daniel usually chooses women with stronger backgrounds. Backgrounds. She meant money, old family name, social status, things I didn't have. But Daniel loved me anyway. We married 2 years later, and Margaret never forgave me. A loud laugh echoed from the dining room. "Rachel!" Margaret called. Her voice carried authority. Dinner was ready. I walked into the room, holding my 4-year-old son Ethan's hand. He looked excited. His tiny shoes tapped against the floor. The table was full. Daniel's brother Luke, his wife Carla, their teenage daughter Megan, and Margaret sat at the head like a queen. Her eyes landed on Ethan. A thin smile appeared. "Well," she said, "someone is growing fast." Ethan hid behind my leg. He was shy around her. I understood why. Margaret never hugged him, never played with him. She watched him like he was a mistake. Daniel pulled out my chair. "Sit, Ratch." We all began eating. The room buzzed with conversation. Luke talked about his new car. Carla showed pictures from their vacation. Megan scrolled on her phone. Margaret watched everything. Quiet, calculating. Then Ethan's fork slipped. Mashed potatoes splattered on the tablecloth. The room went silent. My heart dropped. "Sorry, Mommy," Ethan whispered. Before I could answer, Margaret slammed her fork down. "For heaven's sake." Her voice was sharp. "Can he not behave for one meal?" "He's 4, I said calmly. He didn't mean." But Margaret stood. Her chair scraped loudly. "He needs discipline," she snapped. Then it happened. Fast. Cold. Her hand swung. Smack. The sound echoed across the table. Ethan's head jerked sideways. My baby froze. His eyes filled with tears. For 1 second, no one moved. Then Ethan cried. A broken little cry. And the world inside me exploded. I stood so fast my chair fell. "Don't you ever touch my son." My voice shook the room. Margaret stared at me like I had insulted royalty. "He made a mess," she said coldly. "A child needs correction." "He's a child." Daniel rushed over. "Mom, what the hell?" Luke shifted uncomfortably. Carla whispered, "Margaret." But Margaret looked completely calm, like she had done nothing wrong. Ethan clung to my leg. His cheek was red. Red. My chest burned. "Apologize." I demanded. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "I will not." The room felt heavy. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Mom, just say sorry." She crossed her arms. "That boy needs structure." Rachel clearly refuses to give it. Something dangerous rose inside me. "You hit him." Margaret shrugged. "My parents hit me. I turned out fine." Ethan sniffled behind me. My fists clenched, but I stayed calm. Too calm. Because suddenly, a memory hit me. Something Margaret said months ago. Something strange. Something that never made sense. And now it did. I looked straight at her. You shouldn't have done that, I said quietly. Margaret tilted her head. And why is that? The entire table watched us. My heart pounded, because I knew something she hoped I would never say out loud. Something Daniel didn't even know. Something Margaret had buried for 30 years. I stepped closer. You really want to talk about discipline? I said. Margaret's smile tightened. Excuse me? My voice dropped. Low. Steady. Because if we're talking about parenting. I paused. The room felt frozen. Then I said the one sentence that changed everything. Maybe we should talk about what you did to Daniel when he was 7. Daniel turned slowly. Rachel, what are you talking about? Margaret's face went pale. For the first time that night, she looked afraid. And I wasn't done. Daniel stared at me like the air had been knocked out of his chest. Rachel, what are you talking about? The room went dead quiet. Even Ethan stopped crying. Margaret's fingers gripped the edge of the table. Hard. Her perfect posture cracked for the first time. Rachel, she said slowly, you should be very careful with your words. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Not after what she did. I placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. His cheek was still red. That sight alone gave me strength. You remember, I said softly. Margaret's eyes flashed. Remember what? I looked at Daniel. My heart hurt for him, because I knew what this would do, but the truth had waited long enough. 3 months ago, I said quietly, you and I were cleaning the garage. Daniel frowned. I remember. You went inside to take a phone call. He nodded slowly. Then I looked back at Margaret, and your mother stayed with me. Margaret's jaw tightened. I continued. She started talking about how difficult Daniel was as a child. Daniel looked confused. I wasn't that bad. Margaret laughed sharply. You were stubborn. I ignored her. She told me about a night when you were 7. Daniel froze. You spilled grape juice on the carpet. Margaret suddenly slammed her hand on the table. Rachel, stop. But I didn't. She said you cried. I continued. She said you begged her not to punish you. Daniel's breathing grew heavy. Mom? Margaret shook her head. This is ridiculous. But the fear in her eyes betrayed her. She locked you in the basement. I said quietly. Daniel's face went pale. For hours. The room felt colder. Luke looked stunned. Carla covered her mouth. Margaret's voice came out sharp. That never happened. But Daniel spoke. Softly. Almost to himself. I remember the basement. Everyone turned to him. He stared at the floor. I thought it was a nightmare. Margaret stepped forward. Daniel, don't listen to this nonsense. But Daniel looked up slowly. His voice trembled. I remember banging on the door. Silence. Margaret's face drained of color. I remember crying, Daniel whispered, and begging you to let me out. Carla gasped. Luke muttered, Mom. Daniel looked straight at her now. Did you lock me down there? Margaret opened her mouth, closed it. Then she forced a smile. It was discipline. Those 2 words shattered the room. Daniel stepped back like she had slapped him. You left me in the dark. You needed to learn consequences. You were 7. Margaret's voice cracked with frustration. And you survived. Daniel stared at her like he didn't know who she was. The silence became unbearable. Then Ethan whispered beside me. Mommy, I knelt beside him. It's okay, baby. But it wasn't. Nothing was okay anymore. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. You let me think that was a nightmare for 20 years. Margaret looked defensive now. You were dramatic as a child. Something inside Daniel snapped. No. His voice was firm. Calm. Terrifyingly calm. That was abuse. Margaret flinched. Luke finally spoke. Mom, did you really do that? She looked around the table. Cornered. Exposed. I raised all of you, she said angrily, and you turned out fine. Daniel shook his head, slowly. No. He pointed at Ethan. That stops with my son. Margaret scoffed. So now I'm the villain. Daniel's voice hardened. You hit my child. You embarrassed me in my own house. Daniel stepped closer to her. This isn't your house. Margaret blinked. What? Daniel looked around the room. Then at her. I bought this house. Silence. You live here because I let you. Margaret's lips trembled. You wouldn't throw your mother out. Daniel didn't hesitate. If she hurts my son, I absolutely would. The words hit like thunder. Margaret's composure shattered. Her eyes filled with tears. You're choosing her over your own mother? Daniel answered without blinking. I'm choosing my family. Ethan wrapped his arms around my leg. Daniel placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Then he looked at Margaret again. You need to apologize. She shook her head stubbornly. I will not beg. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then you need to leave tonight. Gasps filled the room. Margaret's voice cracked. You can't mean that. I do. Her eyes darted around the table. Luke looked away. Carla avoided her gaze. Even Megan stared silently. No one defended her. Margaret's voice softened. Small. Fragile. I was trying to teach him discipline. I stepped forward. No, I said quietly. You were repeating the same pain you gave Daniel. Tears rolled down her face. For the first time, Margaret looked human, broken. I didn't know another way, she whispered. Daniel's expression softened slightly, but he didn't back down. That doesn't make it okay. Margaret wiped her tears. Slowly. Then she looked at Ethan, his small red cheek. Her voice shook. I'm sorry. The room held its breath. She turned to me next. I should never have touched him. Ethan squeezed my hand. Daniel nodded slowly. Thank you. Margaret looked around the room again. Then she whispered something no one expected. I was raised worse than that. Silence followed. Pain passed through her eyes. I promised myself I'd be stronger than my parents. Her voice cracked, but I guess I became them. Tears streamed down her face now. Real tears. She turned to Ethan again. You deserved kindness. Ethan hid behind me, but the anger in the room softened slightly. Daniel spoke quietly. Mom, breaking a cycle is hard. Margaret nodded slowly. Yes. She looked at me. You protected him. I held Ethan closer. Every mother should. Margaret gave a weak smile. Then she whispered something that stunned everyone. You're a better mother than I ever was. No one spoke. The room felt heavy with truth. Margaret grabbed her coat. I'll give you all some space. She walked toward the door slowly. Before leaving, she stopped, then looked back at Ethan. I hope someday you forgive me. The door closed softly. Silence filled the house. Daniel sat down slowly, like the weight of years had crashed on him. I wrapped my arms around him. Ethan climbed into his lap. Daniel kissed his forehead. Then he whispered something that stayed with me forever. Love should never feel like fear. And that night, our family finally learned the difference.